Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and this is my top. It started out as a top 10. Honestly, it's probably top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 18. I think it's 18. I'll count them all properly later. Because what are rules anyway? They're all imaginary in this particular sphere. Basically, it's my favorites of 2025, which is almost over. Also, the lighting situation is the moody evening, winter on the prairies light because the sun is gone. So that's what we're dealing with. One of the first books I read, I have a list of audiobooks here, was A Confluence of Witches, celebrating our lunar path, decolonizing the craft, and re-enchanting our world. Casey Zabala was the editor, and it was really good. I'll probably re-listen to it at some point. Sorry, I'm just moving some water from, I had art supplies out, and I realized there's a bit of wet, which does not go well with books. I liked the centering decolonization and re-enchantment, and it was beautiful. I didn't love everything, but it was a lot of different perspectives in one volume, which is my favorite thing about it. I loved it. And then I read Under the Dragon Root by Corinne Boyer. I actually read the Bramble Arch one too this year. This was the last one in the series though. And sometimes her books are hard to get in Canada. I think she's got a Witch's Ointment one coming out sometime, allegedly, or maybe it's out already in the UK. I don't know. Can't get it in Canada at the moment. Or at least I couldn't last I checked. Maybe I can now. Anyway, not really the point. The point is, she combines folklore with plants and plant knowledge and plant uses, herbalism, history of plants, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of both folk medicine and folk tales, like the lore around certain plants. And these are the ones that have some sort of negative associations. So wormwood is the first one. Let me see if I can find, does it have the contents? Yes, it does. Valerian, poppy, mushrooms. It's grouped by season. So those were autumn. Winter includes mandrake, hellebore, a few others. Spring, henbane. I like that one. Lily of the valley, rue, fern. I don't use a lot of these. I'm not familiar with a lot of them. There is black henbane near where I live. There's not supposed to be. It's invasive, but I mean, it's a perennial. It dies off every year, but it produces enough seeds that it keeps going. Belladonna, foxglove, aconite, and datura are the last ones for summer. And then there's some appendices about making different sort of powders, and obviously you have to proceed with extreme caution for most of these. Wormwood's a bit safer, but yeah, you can do some serious damage with these, so don't do anything stupid. Which I feel like is a disclaimer often needed on the internet. But anyway, I love her writing, and I love any combination of folklore, folk medicine, and plants, historical and magical uses, any of that. Love it. Okay, and then I listened to The Light Eaters, How the Unseen World of Plant Intelligence Offers a New Understanding of Life on Earth by Zoe Schlanger. I don't know if that's how you say her name. It was amazing. I loved it. I love anything to do with plants. I'm a gardener, sort of. I have a balcony garden. Herbalist. My kitchen is half herbs for teas and things at this point. And every time I go for a walk, I'm like down on the ground taking a photo of a cute plant. And people think I'm a weirdo because honestly, I kind of am, but I'm working with it. And this was so fascinating. So if you've read like The Mother Tree, for example, you may know about the mycelium network that connects plants and how they communicate, or one of the ways they communicate. Scent chemicals through the air might be another way. And it's so fascinating. I may have to reread it again because I've already forgotten too many things. I listened to The Bible Says So by Dan McClellan. So he and another Dan Beecher, have a podcast called Data Over Dogma, and it's one of my favorite podcasts of all time. It's very geeky. He's a biblical scholar, and the other guy is just a guy. Very nice guy. I'm sure he has many, many talents, and being a podcast co-host is one of them. But he sort of is the everyman on the podcast who can ask all the not stupid questions, because he's a very smart guy. Even during his time on the show, he's learned a lot. So he does ask very intelligent questions, but he sort of asks questions that audience members might have, and then Dan McClellan, who's the biblical scholar, answers them, and they have a back and forth conversation about what certain things mean. And so McClellan wrote a book recently about some of the biggest controversies in the Bible, and does the Bible really say what people allege that it says about abortion and homosexuality and all sorts of things that people have all sorts of real strong feelings about that might not entirely be based on any kind of solid anything at all. Facts, evidence, biblical interpretation, anything. So it's a fascinating book. I also listened to The Black Panthers Speak, which is edited by Philip J. Foner. It's a collection of documents, newsletters, all sorts of writings of various members of the Black Panthers. And it was fascinating, because I tell you, as a white woman in Canada, the media coverage, such as it is, of groups like the Black Panthers is largely, oh, they're scary. And that's it. I mean, there's no depth, there's no substance, there's no... I'll stop waving that thing around. You don't really know what they talked about. There's an idea that they were violent, which it turns out they were not. There was one rogue guy who brought the violence once. But the party as a whole was generally nonviolent. They did sometimes arm themselves to protect themselves, which is technically their right in the States, being the slightly bananas gun culture that I have strong opinions about. But the FBI did not think highly of their... Is it the Second Amendment? I get all my amendments mixed up. You've got to name them. Numbers are confusing, guys. Anyway. So usually when there were any confrontations, almost every single time, except for this one incident of a rogue, allegedly rogue, party member, it was the FBI and the police that brought the violence, which, having watched Black Lives Matter protests and Palestinian protests, is no longer really surprising. They're always the ones bringing the violence. The protesters almost never bring the violence. They're just there. Like, they're yelling sometimes, sure, and they have signs, which are not really that scary, people, come on. And in Portland, apparently sometimes they dress up in costumes, which is hilarious, because you cannot look serious in your riot gear when you're faced against an inflatable dinosaur. You just can't. So that was lovely. But anyway, the misinformation about what the Black Panthers stood for is considerable. The media is heavily biased against them. Even though what they write is mostly just basic human decency. They wanted to be treated like equals. They wanted to be treated like human beings. They wanted their kids to be able to go to school and be safe. They wanted their kids to not go to school hungry. So they were very much for social equality. The socialism freaked out the Americans, as tends to happen. But really, like, I was reading through it going, this is kind of, like, I can get behind most of this. They were a bit sexist in the early days, but to their credit, when Black women pointed this out to them and said, no, we want to be part of this too, and we want to be treated with respect, and you need to change the way you talk about us, they did. They recognized the misogyny in their language and behavior, and they changed, which I can respect. Then I listened to, what should I go into next? The Woman They Could Not Silence. One Woman, Her Incredible Fight for Freedom, and the Men Who Tried to Make Her Disappear by Kate Moore. I can't actually remember this woman's name. That's a travesty. Anyway, she had opinions, and her husband didn't like her opinions and tried to lock her up in a mental institution, which he successfully did for a good long while, and she had to fight like hell to get out. And it was infuriating, let me tell you, but she was very impressive. I like this woman. And then I read Beyond the Veil, Male-Female Dynamics in Modern Muslim Society by Fatima Mernissi. I really liked this book. It's excellent. If it's the first time you've ever read a book about feminism in the Middle East, probably not the best place to start, potentially, unless, you know, the blurb thrills you, in which case, go for it. It is a little, like, I find having a little historical and cultural context was helpful, made it easier to read, I think. Anyway, it's a classic study on Muslim women and fundamentalism, in which Mernissi argues that the present conservative wave against women in the Muslim world is a defense against recent profound changes in sex roles and in perceptions of sexual identity, which I feel like is totally understandable and happens in the West too. See Trump's rise after Obama. Like, that sort of backlash, the reaction happens in the West as well, and is not so, like, it's not a unique to the Middle Eastern world sort of thing. This was written in 1975. It was updated in 87, I think, looks like. So it's a bit out of date. I do have other things that are more recent, so I'll get to one of them. But it's fascinating. And people always assume that there's no feminism in the Middle East. That's ridiculous. There are other words I could use to describe what that is, but it's nonsense. There is. There has been feminism there as long as there's been feminism anywhere. There are different strains of feminism, as there are everywhere else in the world. Some centered around Islamic beliefs, some more secular, some more influenced by Western culture, some firmly in opposition to Western culture. So there's a lot of variety, and it's really complicated and fascinating, and I'm a geek. So that's that. And I read Woman, Life, Freedom, Voices and Art from the Women's Protests in Iran. So obviously this is more recent. These are from a couple years ago. I can't believe it's been a couple years already. Since, what was her name? Gina Mahsa Amini died in 2022. Oy. Anyway, Woman, Life, Freedom is the slogan that they chanted when they uncovered their hair, burned their headscarves, and had all these mass demonstrations. And actually there's a woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year? This year? One of these recent years. She's Iranian, and she's been protesting for women's rights in Iran for, I don't know, ever. And she was in jail when she won the Peace Prize, and then she was released, and now she was at a protest again, so she was reincarcerated. And Amnesty International and everybody else is, like, protesting on her behalf. So if you want to get updates about her, Narges Mohammadi, I believe is her name. Amnesty International has a lot of information about her, and she has a Instagram channel, and somebody must update it on her behalf, but it is her official, like, there is an official one where she releases public statements. Even from jail, she would communicate public statements, like sneak them out of jail. It's nuts that this still has to happen in the world. Anyway, this book is women's art, photography, poetry, all sorts of protest art, essays. There are a few essays in here. It's just, if you have any interest at all in either these protests for women's rights or the Middle East, it's definitely worth a read, because it's, like, I didn't like everything, but as with any sort of compilation, you're not going to love everything, but it's really powerful, and I'm so glad I read it. And then I read An Unnecessary Woman, which is a novel by Rabi Alameddine. I think he's Lebanese. Is he Lebanese? Oh, I can't tell from the back. It's set just after the Lebanese Civil War. He actually has a new book out, I think, or a new book coming out. I should look that up and put it on hold, because this book was gorgeous. It was delicious. I loved. The main character in this book is a cranky middle to older woman, like middle-aged to older. I can't remember exactly how old she is. Oh no, she's past middle age. 72. She's 72. She still gets out and about sometimes when she has to. She's book-loving, obsessive, 72-year-old, unnecessary woman. She's unnecessary because she never married and had kids, and is well past the age where she can do that now. And she has opinions. And she has a lot of opinions about books, and I love her so much. I could grow up to be her. So if I reread this again when I'm 72, we'll see how close I get. She is fantastic. It's a meditation on, among other things, Aging, Politics, Literature, Loneliness, Grief, and Resilience. It is so beautiful, and this woman is just, I love her. I went to Iceland this year. That was a year highlight. So I read a bunch of Icelandic authors. There are some I'd already known, like Yrsa Sigurðardóttir. I've read everything she's published in English. I do not read Icelandic, unfortunately, so I have to wait for the translations. But while I was there, I got this book for 2,972 kroner. Icelandic prices are slightly terrifying. not that Canadian prices are good, but oi. Much respect to ordinary Icelandic people for like surviving their food prices, never mind their book prices. But they do like their books there. They're a big bookish culture, and I can respect that. So this is Eva Björg Eigisdóttir. The Creek on the Stairs is the first book. It's not necessarily my well, it is maybe my favorite. I don't know. I can't pick a favorite in the series. There are 6 of them. I've read all 6 just this year because they are the sort of thing you can start reading and then obsessively finish. And yeah, there's no list of the other titles in here because it's the first one. Honestly, sometimes I don't use my own brain as much as I should. Anyway, it is disturbing. It is a thriller. It's a bit atmospheric. That's what I love about Icelandic thrillers. Somehow they always have the atmosphere of the land in their novels. Well, not always, but a lot of the time, and I love it. And it's so good. Her books are so much fun. This one is a bit more disturbing than fun, just because the content. Essay is one of the crimes committed, I think, against a child at one point, or a teenager child, basically a child. I can't quite recall, but it's something like that. So it is quite disturbing in places. It's not graphic as I recall, but you do deal with the fallout effect of what happens after those sorts of crimes to the people who are affected by those sorts of crimes. When there isn't justice originally. So I think that's what this one was about. As I say, I've read about, I think there's 6 in the series now, and I've read all of them. I love them. And I'll keep reading them as fast as she can publish them. I also read, this was earlier in the year, The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I'll reread this again sometime because the atmosphere in this one was also gorgeous. This is what I wanted from The Discovery of Witches, but this is more literary. It's frankly much better written. The characters are actual people with development and dialogue that is not cringeworthy. I did not have a good time trying to read that first Discovery of Witches book. Sorry to anybody who likes it. I still haven't watched the TV show. I may do one day because I've heard people really like it, but the book is not for me. Anyway, this is language. Okay. The woman in this book is studying at a university. I think it's like Oxford or something. And her family has a connection to the 15th century reign of Vlad the Impaler and a time-defined pact that may have kept his awful work alive through the ages. So she goes on this adventure throughout Europe to monasteries and dusty libraries to the capitals of Eastern Europe, in a feat of storytelling so rich, so hypnotic, so exciting that has enthralled readers around the world, which I think is pretty accurate. I would say that's an accurate description. I will reread it someday. It was a good time. What else? I finished rereading all the Brontes this year. I read them all when I was an undergrad, like 20 years ago. And then I started I'd read Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre again since then, but I hadn't read the rest of them again since. So I finished rereading them all in the last couple of years. Villette was my favorite of those other ones. Jane Eyre is still probably my favorite, but I loved Villette. The feelings of loneliness and what you just have to bear in life is so very relatable. I don't need a book to be relatable to enjoy it. I don't particularly relate to vampires, but I did relate to this one, and it's such a beautiful book and a heartbreaking book in a lot of ways, and I love it. Yeah, big fan. I read Genius Inc. Virginia Woolf on How to Read. I will reread this at some point. I listened to the audiobook, so I think I'll probably actually reread it and maybe like tab it and take notes and things. Anyway, she writes about Charlotte Bronte, George Eliot, Henry James, Montaigne, Joseph Conrad, Thomas Hardy. Ooh, I may have to reread this section on Thomas Hardy. Because I was watching one of Candy's videos at the Great Literary Rabbit Hole, and she was talking about her Thomas Hardy reading, and I do like Far From the Madding Crowd, so I'm torn between potentially rereading that one of these days or reading The Return of the Native, which I've never read. Let me know what you think, if you have an opinion, if you've read either of those. So yeah, this was fun. I love Virginia Woolf. I love her. I read a few of these Cambridge Companions this year. I can't actually remember if I finished this at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, but it's excellent. It's the Cambridge Companion to the Brontes. It's got all sorts. A bit of their history, a bit of criticism, a bit of context, some on their poetry, on their juvenilia, on the several different books in sort of publication order, ideology, personality in the Bronte characters, women writers, women's issues, the Brontes and religion, and the Bronte myth. And so, yeah, I love this Cambridge Companion series. It's super fun. Then I got into a big poetry kick this year, like more than I've ever done before. I've read poetry before, but not this much. And I got really into the Romantic poets. So Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, Byron, and sort of Blake. I'm not the biggest fan of Blake. I like the idea of Blake more than I like Blake's actual work, although that he illustrated his poems is fantastic. But my favorite thing I read of any of theirs was Don Juan. And it is pronounced Don Juan in the English, this particular English poem, for the rhyme scheme. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work with the meter and the rhyming. It is so funny. It's this weird, like, he goes all over Europe, from Spain to Turkey, has all these adventures. He's very much not who you think he's going to be. Yeah, the sojourn in Russia as the lover of Catherine the Great. Maybe that is a little bit what you think he's going to be. But it's hilarious. It undercuts your expectations, or at least it did mine. And it's satire, and it's so funny. It's basically melodramatic sometimes. It's very dramatic, but it's also very, very funny, which I did not expect going in and was pleasantly surprised. And then I listened to The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel. I think she's also got a new book coming out this year, which I'll have to go read. But this is the story of art history, just featuring the women for a change, because that almost never happens. And what you find the more you read art history, or at least what I found, is there are more women than you think. And often they were quite popular at the time that they were producing work, and then they just were never written into the canon, which is maddening, because sometimes they sold really well during their lifetimes, and then by the next generation they'd been completely forgotten about, or they got married and had kids and were completely forgotten about. So that's maddening. So this book was delightful, and I listened to it as an audiobook, but I was constantly looking up women throughout the entire listening experience. It's fantastic. Oh, and then I forgot to mention, I also listened to The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I was in a bit of a rush to read that, so I listened to it on, sped up a little bit to return it to the library, or before the library took it back, which is not ideal, I think, for Hawthorne. So I will definitely listen to that again, because it is gorgeous, and I loved it. And I want to read more like essays and criticism about it as well, one of these days. I'll get to that. And then my last book, because it's a giant one, is this Joan Mitchell art book, which is also the most expensive one. It was like $70, which, oi, come on, guys. I mean, I realize they're expensive to produce. This was produced by the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art with the Yale University Press, New Haven, and London. It was edited by Sarah Roberts and Katie Siegel. It's got 10 essays and then three or four little, it looks like little sort of interstitials where they just have a 1 or 2 page chat about a particular artwork. And then different essays about different parts of her life, where she was at as an artist at that point. She ended her life in France. She lived there for a long time. She started in New York with the New York School and then moved to France, and I love her. She was a character. I think all the people in this movement were larger than life sort of characters. But I tabbed a bunch of her. Let me find some of the, I tabbed them at the top. I can't see them. There's a ton of her artwork in here though. And it's so beautiful. It made me emotional when I was looking at it. I don't know if it's gonna show up really well on the, my little phone camera, but I really love her work. And let's find something more like what she's known for. I can find the city landscape. I'll show that one because I think it's part of the one that's on the front, and I love it. Ooh, here, I like this one too. This is Les Bluettes. So she was an abstract expressionist, so bit modernist, bit well, very abstract. Is this where the city landscape one was? They've got these sort of folded in pages that then fold open, and I'm having a tiny bit of difficulty navigating those. Oh, and they showed some of her sketchbooks in here too, which was fun. This is maybe more the style she's known for. Anyway, it was delightful and I love it. So those are my favorite books of 2025. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.